There have been some heated conversations about how some in the Reformed Christian community have glorified the Crusades and are advocating for modern crusades against what they believe are Muslim invaders of Europe and to some extent the United States. This is an extension of the Christian nationalism debate, and it's driven by a number of factors, including national identity and how some Christian nationalists see Christendom as being under attack by modern invaders of traditional Christian lands. Others see it as a conflict involving political and theological authority. The idea that religious leaders could call for and even lead military campaigns is rooted in the history of the Crusades. This debate is also fueled by what many see as the moral decline of the West and the need for righteous legislation regarding abortion, same-sex marriage, public prayer, the boundaries of free speech, and even administering a truly Christian kingdom by a Christian prince who has the ability to wage spiritual warfare in the name of Christ. Those who oppose such accuse these of historical revisionism or, at a minimum, ignorance of history. But in this heated political season, where stakes are high and candidates on both sides are telling us that America will not survive if their side doesn't win, tensions are running extremely high. This has led to strange unions and alliances of Christian nationalists, right-wing political commentators, religious extremists, and political strategists who are looking to impact the election and the culture. So where do I stand in all of this? Well, I can appreciate the desire to have a Christian nation, and I believe we should be salt and light in this world. It's not wrong to desire righteousness, but we are not allowed to act unrighteously in order to accomplish our goals. This is not a case of the ends justifying the means. To be blunt, using the Crusades as a battle cry or as a positive example of what is needed today is nothing less than ignorance or of history or historical revisionism, as I've already said. For this reason, I want to begin a series where we talk about the Crusades. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and especially the ugly. And there's a lot of ugly. If you're a fan of history, you're going to love this series. If you hate history, I argue it's because you never had a good history teacher. I want to share with you many important things that you need to know and that will hopefully persuade you to not glorify the Crusades or look to them as something that needs to be repeated or used as a pattern for any future movement. So pause this video, pop some popcorn, kick your shoes off, flop down in the recliner, and let's go back in time to the time of the First Crusade that lasted from 1095 to 1099 AD. And whatever you think the Crusades were about, I bet you're going to be shocked at what you learn in this series. So what were the Crusades all about? Isn't that the $64,000 question? And if I were to do a survey, I suggest most people would probably tell us that the Crusades were to free the Holy Land, especially Jerusalem, from the evil and tyrannical Muslims who were persecuting Christians and Jews. You may have heard that Christians were having their land stolen and their guts sliced open to see if they had swallowed any silver or gold. You may have heard that Christians were unable to go on pilgrimages to the Holy Land since the Muslims had taken control. You have probably heard that Muslims had destroyed all of the Christian holy sites in Jerusalem and were trying to wipe Christianity off of the face of the earth. If you've heard those reasons for the Crusades, you're not alone. These are the very reasons that Pope Urban II mentioned at the Council of Clermont in 1095 to call for the First Crusade. We have 6 versions of the speech that Urban II gave at Clermont on November the 27th, 1095, including a letter from the Pope himself written afterwards that speaks of his description of the atrocities that he lists as reasons for the crusade. Before hundreds of clerics and noblemen, he called upon the rich and the poor to stop their fighting amongst themselves and take the fight to the real enemy, the Saracen invaders. In one part, Pope Urban II is recorded as saying, "Your brethren who live in the East are in urgent need of your help, and you must hasten to give them the aid which has often been promised them. For, as the most of you have heard, the Turks and Arabs have attacked them and conquered the territory of Romania, the Greek Empire, as far west as the shore of the Mediterranean and the Hellespont, which is called the arm of St. George. They've occupied more and more of the lands of those Christians, and have overcome them in 7 battles. They've killed and captured many, and have destroyed the churches and devastated the empire. If you permit them to continue thus for a while with the impurity, the faithful of God will be much more widely attacked by them. On this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ heralds, to publish this everywhere, and to persuade all people of whatever rank, foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. I say this to those who are present. It means also for those who are absent. Moreover, Christ commands it. Robert the monk recorded his version of the same speech, and he may have done it as many as 25 years after Urban's presentation at Clermont. His telling says it this way: "We wish you to know what a grievous cause has led us to your country, what peril threatening you and all the faithful has brought us. From the confines of Jerusalem and the city of Constantinople, a horrible tale has gone forth and very frequently has been brought to our ears, namely, that a race from the kingdom of the Persians, an accursed race, a race utterly alienated from God, a generation forsooth which has not directed its heart and has not entrusted its spirit to God, has invaded the lands and those of those Christians and has depopulated them by the sword, pillage, and fire. It has led away a part of the captives into its own country, and a part of it has destroyed by cruel tortures. It has either entirely destroyed the churches of God or appropriated them for the rites of its own religion. They destroy the altars, after having defiled them with their uncleanliness. They circumcise the Christians, and the blood of the circumcision they either spread upon the altars or pour into the vases of the baptismal font. When they wish to torture people by a base death, they perforate their navels and, dragging forth the extremity of the intestines, bind it to a stake. Then with flogging they lead the victim around until the viscera, having gushed forth, the victim falls prostrate upon the ground. Others they bind to a post and pierce with arrows. Others they compel to extend their necks, and then, attacking them with naked swords, attempting to cut through the neck with a single blow. What shall I say of the abominable rape of the women? To speak of it is worse than to be silent. The kingdom of the Greeks is now dismembered by them and deprived of territory so vast in extent that it cannot be traversed in a march of 2 months. On whom therefore is the labor of avenging these wrongs and recovering this territory incumbent, if not upon you? You upon whom, above other nations, God has conferred remarkable glory in arms, great courage, bodily activity, and strength to humble the hairy scalp of those who resist you. Here are the facts. Jerusalem had been under Muslim control since 637 AD, when the Rashidun Caliphate under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab. Early Muslim rulers were mostly tolerant of Christians. When Umar took the city, he established a treaty known as the Pact of Umar, which granted Christians protections and allowed them to continue practicing their religion, and even allowed foreigners to make pilgrimages to the Holy Land. It wasn't until hundreds of years later, of the Fatimid Caliphate, Caliph al-Hakim bi Amr Allah, also known as the Mad Caliph, he began persecuting Christians as well as other religious practices that he had disagreed with. He persecuted Christians and even his fellow Muslims. The Mad Caliph made Jews wear yellow turbans or head coverings, and the Christians were required to wear blue turbans. But he also forbade most single Muslim women from even leaving their own house. As a Shia Muslim, he persecuted Sunni Muslims and even other Shia Muslims of a different sect or denomination than what he was. He was called the Mad Caliph for a reason. Now he ruled from 996 to 1021. In 1009 AD, he destroyed the Holy Church. He destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It was later rebuilt between 1027 and 1048 with the help of the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX and other Christian leaders. And it was the Mad Caliph's successor, Caliph al-Zahir, who was his son, who allowed it to be rebuilt. And even when the Seljuk Turks took control of Jerusalem in 1073, pilgrimages still continued, although they were at a higher tax rate and occasional violence did occur. This is somewhat understandable since they had won their first defeat against the Byzantine army at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, just 2 years earlier. And by 1095, when Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade, the persecution of the Mad Caliph had been ended for 74 years. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre had been rebuilt, and the Jews and Christians were allowed to live and make pilgrimages to the Holy Land, with a relative safety that had been enjoyed for most of the Muslim control of the Holy Land. The Muslims had not taken control of Romania in Urban's day. In fact, the Turks never controlled all of Romania and only began to occupy parts of it in the late 14th century, nearly 300 years later. And Muslims did not control the Hellespont, as Constantinople didn't fall until May the 29th, 1453. The fact is, things are often never as good or bad as they're first reported to be. And now that we've established that many of the reasons Pope Urban listed were either greatly exaggerated or outright false, what did prompt the First Crusade? Well, that's what we're going to look at in the next chapter. I'm going to break these up into smaller segments in order to prevent information overload and to give you time to digest each part of this adventure. I'll link in the show notes to the preserved copies of the speech at Clermont given by Pope Urban II, so you can read it on your own. In the next video, we're going to look at the underlying reasons, many of them political, why the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I requested aid from the West, and why Pope Urban II declared that it wasn't really he, but Christ himself who called the faithful to action. In the next video, we're going to get into some amazing political intrigue that will reveal plans within plans and manipulation of Christians in the name of Christ, and with the promise of forgiveness of all their sin in exchange for their service. I hope you'll stay tuned.